Hello, everybody. My name is Robert W. Puhl, P as in Peter, UHL, and I'm going to be your instructor for this and whatever, well, for this course. This will be in all my courses, so you'll see the same video of the introduction, because obviously it's not going to change. All right. So first of all, I'm going to start off back when I was almost your age, 17 years old. I graduated from high school at 17. And when I did, I had no plans for college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. We didn't have any money. We were very poor. So I joined the U.S. Air Force. Then just because I wanted to be on my own, get away from home. There's nothing wrong with home. It was fine, but I just wanted to be on my own. And I worked out pretty good for me. I became a nuclear weapons technician and moved to Denver for tech school and Glasgow, Montana for my main part of my duty and met a little lady there. And she became my first wife, Marilyn. And I introduced her as my first wife, but I'm still married to her. So anyhow, um, and then after I got out of the Air Force, I still didn't really know what wanted to do. So I looked around for jobs and I got one as a production manager trainee at a drapery manufacturing company. Now, this company was trying to do a good job. They tried to hire people to be in management instead of just hiring somebody off the street. They were going to give them a shot, and it worked out pretty good. Three of us were hired, and I stuck it out. The other two didn't. They fell by the wayside. And after a little while, I became a supervisor, and then I became the plant manager, and then I became the plant manager of the two factories in West Virginia. And I moved to West Virginia, of course, to do that. So that worked out really well for me. And then they moved the plants to Hialeah, Florida. And when they didn't offer me a job. And I was kind of disappointed because I've been there for 8 years and knew them. And I liked the company and liked working there. And so I went on my merry way. And about 6 months later, I got a call from them. They wanted me to come to Hialeah, Florida, work for them. And I really enjoyed telling them no. I was not going to do it now. I would have done it maybe then, but nope. So anyhow, here I am in West Virginia, and I have to close the plant. So I went to work a couple places in the cut and sew operations, and ended up in North Carolina. I worked there for a year, and they told me, no, don't buy a house or anything here because you're probably not going to stay here. And they had a guy in California that wasn't working out for them, so they got rid of him, and they moved me from there to California. To Commerce, California, and Draper. Excuse me, it was a mattress pad manufacturing company, and it was a little different. It was still cutting through operations. That wasn't the part of it, but it was the entire workforce was Mexican. So I learned to speak Spanish. I went to school 8 semesters at night, and I learned to speak decent Spanish. And you can drop me in Mexico, and I'm pretty comfortable. And and I was the only person in management that learned to speak the language there. And so they really respect me and like me a lot. I got invited to all the quinceañeras and all that stuff too. So I really enjoyed working there. Good people too. So I worked there at that plant, or rather in yeah, at that plant. And then I had a couple other jobs. I tried a couple different things, didn't work out. Then I got hired by a company. It was a fiber processor for the company. We were buying fiber fill from them, the company I worked for, and it was called Bonded Fiber Products. And they processed polyester fiber. And this was something really different for me, and I really liked it there. And I was there for a while. I was there from 1992 until I came to California in 2007. And um, that was, like I said, it was interesting because it was something new. And also, Wellman was a company that was really big on safety. They had a wall hanging and wallet cards, and I wish I had one of them wallet cards. And they had their 10 things that were their tenets of their company. I forget what they called them. Vision of excellence, I think it was. And the very first one is the workplace is safe, clean, and healthy. And they did their best to make it so. So Wellman was a good company. So I became the safety coordinator at the facility in Commerce, California. Now I did other things there too. I was in charge of the needle punch operation, and needle punch is a non-woven, and it was like a woven fabric has with one going this way, one going this way, and they're woven. A non-woven, it's not. It's a web coming of fibers coming through like the machine, but it has needle punch, which is really needles that have barbs on them, and they move through up and down through this thing, and about 100,000 needles on this needle punch, and they make it something like a felt. And these were civil engineering fabrics used in roads and stuff like that, drainage things. And that was really interesting. And I liked it because I was kind of my own boss. I ran that division. I did the sales. I went to job sites, and it was really nice to do different things in your job. And I liked it there a lot. And and then they were bought out by a company called Western Nonwovens Inc., which bought several companies in Southern California and there and actually around the country. Went to work for them, and I had interviewed one time with the owner of Western Nonwovens. He wanted me to come to work for him as a quality control guy, and I didn't like it too much. So after he bought the company, he calls me up and says, "Hey, see, you didn't want to come to work for me, so I bought the company you're working for. So now you work for me anyhow." So that worked out pretty good. And and while there, I was they had a, a set of consultants and stuff that did their environmental and all that jazz. And they sent this email out and to everybody saying, oh, they're going to come visit you and they want to see your IIPP and your safety program and your permits and all this stuff. I said, fine. So just so happened that was the last place they visited, the last facility. And they walked into my office and I had them a stack of papers about an inch thick. And they looked at me and they said, what's that? And I says, this is stuff you asked for in your email. And they said, oh, well, you're the only one who had it. Well, I think that's really the thing that really got me into the front of the line for a promotion into this. And I ended up actually being in charge uh, of industrial safety. I was the director of safety and environmental compliance. And it was I really liked it, and I did a lot of good things. One of the things they had this company called, but I wasn't big. I didn't know much about environmental when I took this job. But you know, you learn. You take the job, and then you learn. That's what I did. And they had these. Uh, Paltex was a small mom and pop operation, very profitable, and they didn't give a darn about environmental stuff, believe me, and or much about safety either. So they had 55-gallon drums of a latex based kind of like stuff, different things. Then none of the stuff was toxic, but it was stuff you just couldn't throw away. So they had just stacked these drums outside the plant. I mean, they were a huge, it must have been, there was over 100, like 120 drums. And so the boss says to me, take care of it. So I used to go down there at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had to get some help to hold these things around, and I had to get down, and I didn't do it all at one shot. And I had to do a little bit at a time, and I kind of tried to figure out what these were. And some of them were labeled, some of them weren't. I just did my best to consolidate them and make a list and get some kind of an inventory about them, and which I did. And I got it together and I put it out to the bids for like four different the companies and took the lowest bidder and they picked it up and got rid of it all nice and honest and legal. And that was a big win for me from the company because nobody knew what to do with this stuff. And so I did that and I took care of the permits and I hired a consultant for the first time I did the permits, and after that, I just did it myself. Wasn't that big a deal, and I took care of the safety stuff and all the OSHA stuff, and I really enjoyed working there. And however, during this time, my daughter and son-in-law moved to Oklahoma because their son, my grandson, was going to high school, and they didn't want him to go to high school in California with like 900 kids in the class. And my son-in-law, was raised in Spiro. So he packed up in late 2005 and moved his wife, my daughter, and grandkids to Spiro, Oklahoma. And then where they were living wasn't working out. And my son-in-law, Jimmy, he came to live with us. I mean, no sense him having a place of his own in Southern California for a few months till he could sell his company that he had, a little company. And so he was living with us. And it wasn't working out where my daughter and grandkids were living, like I said before. So he says to me, I got an idea. And I says, what's that, Jimmy? He says, you've been looking at this house in Oklahoma in Spiral, and I was just for kicks. And I said, yeah. And he says, why don't you buy it and let Tori and the kids live there? And when you retire, you'll have a place to live in Oklahoma. And I said, that sounds like a plan. That was on a Thursday. On Sunday, I bought the house, and it's the house we're living in right now. We love it. So I did that. And then and then on January 2006, my daughter my wife moved out here, in this new house with the family, with the rest of them that were here while they were looking for a place still. And I was still working in Southern California, and it was okay for a while. I was living in a hotel, and they were paying all my expenses. They were really nice to me, and I got along with them, and I really liked working there. And but I was getting tired of it. I wanted to come here with my family and the new beginning, So I wanted, I mean, they wanted me to work for 4 more weeks. And I says, I tell you what, I'll work for 4 more weeks, but I want 4 weeks severance pay with full benefits after that. And they looked at me and they said, what? We don't give severance pay to people that are quitting. I says, okay, fine. Went back to my office and I got there was an email from the VP saying, yeah, you work for us for 4 more weeks and they'll give me 4 weeks severance pay and full benefits. I says, pretty cool. And then the guy they hired to replace me was incompetent, and his head wasn't in it either. I mean, he was out of it. Anyhow, so they had a pending OSHA investigation. So I went back to California for a week as a consultant to handle this OSHA investigation, and I made about a month's salary during that week because as a consultant, you can make a lot of money. Um, so that worked out pretty good for me. So I get to Oklahoma, look in the papers, and there's an ad for a safety director for OK Foods. Hmm. So I called him up, made an appointment, had a nice interview, and they didn't hire me though. So, life goes on. So I wrote a real nice letter to the vice president that interviewed me, thanking him for his time and asking him to keep my resume on file. And I really had a thought in the back of my mind that something was going to happen with OK Foods. So if you have a job interview and it doesn't pan out for you, don't give up. Write them a nice letter thanking them, everything else. So, um, so about 6 months after this, I was got a job at Arcola just as the scale clerk, and at the quarry in Arkansas. And I get home from work, and there's an email from the vice president saying, as I feared, he says, the guy we hired didn't work out. So if you want the job, I won't even interview anybody else. You can have it. So I called him up the next day and I said, yeah, I'll take it. And I went to work for OK Foods. And I worked there for almost 10 years. I started in 2007 and it's the end of 2000 in March. So I retired at the end of 2016. So just like 3 months short of it. And I always tell everybody this. OK Food's a funny place to work anyhow. It was, and probably not much better. And one of the things they did, they sold out to Bachoco a couple of years before I left, a Mexican company, and they appear to be doing like pretty good. So I wish them the best. And the Bachoco sent these two guys, one of their from their safety department or whatever, to inspect that go around our facilities. And I had to take them around. It was fine. And there was a real tall guy who spoke very good Spanish. He was married to a Mexican woman, lived in Mexico, perfect Spanish, and he spoke English with a British accent because he was from England. And he did all the talking. And then there was another guy, short. He was a shorter guy. This guy was really tall. He was a shorter guy, and he was from Mexico, and he didn't speak any English. He didn't say a word. So I called them Penn and Teller. so, uh, and they just didn't understand though anything much about American laws or anything like that. In fact, we were at one of the plants and they had a fluorescent light bulb over some dry goods boxes, plastic, whatever the type of things like that, flammable stuff. But oh, they were just terrible. Oh, you can't have this, that, the palace is gonna melt and start a fire. I've been around a long time, and I've seen a couple of palaces melt, but not for a long time. And they never started a fire. I mean, it was just, man, I don't know what they're doing there. They guess they don't have UL in Mexico. Um, so, but OK Foods, anyhow, what the best part that happened at OK Foods was I wasn't there about a week when we got a notice from the EPA that they were going to inspect our process safety management program. We didn't have one. I didn't know anything about process safety management, so it's the best thing ever happened to me. So we got together at the Heavener plant, a whole bunch of us in that conference room for 10 hours a day for like 2 weeks, and we hired a consultant and slapped together a process safety management program. And guess what? It flew. We went through the process and the inspection, and it was pretty doggone good. All things considered, it was really good. And so then that started. Then I put together a corporate process safety management team, and we wrote a process safety manual that was it was really good, and they're following it. I hope so to this day, and I think it, saved us a lot. I think in the long run, it saved us having any serious releases. We never had any serious releases, so that was good. But I retired from there 2016, and I was sitting in a River City Safety Environmental Council meeting, and lady that's sitting next to me was an adjunct instructor here, and she asked me if I'd like to teach. And I said, well, I don't have a teaching certificate. She says, you don't need one. Do you have a degree? I said, yeah, I have a bachelor's degree. And she hooked me up with, well, she told me to go see Mrs. McConnell, which I did. And here I am, but many, many years later, still teaching at Carl Albert. And I really like it. I like the teaching. I like the interaction with the students. I miss the in-person interaction. That was the best part, and almost any teacher will tell you that. The best part of teaching is the time you spend in the classroom with your students. And but here we are. Everything's online now, and that's just the way it is. So we just make the best of it with what we can. Now, one thing I want to tell you right now, okay, I'm not a professor here. I'm not even on the, what you call, I'm on the faculty, but I'm an adjunct instructor. So I don't have a master's degree, which would be required to be for me to be on the, what do you want to call it, full-time staff. So don't call me a professor. You could, but do call me, okay? I'm here for that. Call me if you have a problem or question, especially if it's something that's timely, like you're working on something and you're stumped on something, or this question doesn't make sense. No, don't put it off. Call me. That's what I'm here for. My number is 918-839-6990, and you're going to see that number all over the place. Use it. All right. So that's a little about me. On each of these classes, there's a little bit of it early on. There's an intro. I want to hear a little bit about you, and that's how we can get to know each other, and we'll probably be talking. So that's it for me. If I figure out how to close this, there we go. That's it. Bye.